Sean Hannity and Vivek Ramaswamy had an interesting debate last night. Ramaswamy is getting some heat from some on the right, as I mentioned, because of his stance on the Israel situation. But his stance, to me, is totally reasonable. He condemned the attacks. I haven't listened to every single thing he said about it. So if he said something horrible or delusional or deranged about the situation in Israel, I haven't heard it. All I've heard him say is to condemn the attacks, say that Israel has every right to defend itself, but he wants to avoid World War III, and he doesn't want America to needlessly get involved and potentially make the situation worse and bring in other world powers, and then you have World War III, which is also my stance. Happens to be correct, I think. But even if you disagree with it for some reason, I mean, even if you think that America should put boots on the ground, even if you are with Lindsey Graham, let's go bomb Iran, you should still admit that the Ramaswamy approach, the non-intervention approach, it's at least reasonable and rational and worth taking into consideration. It's not a crazy point of view. Yet some Republicans are quite mad at him, including Sean Hannity. And I want you to listen to a little bit of this exchange between Hannity and Ramaswamy. Listen.
Needs to be a party where if your campaign is principally being run by super PACs, people who can give unlimited amounts of money to your campaign, I don't think that befits the Republican Party. I think we need to be better than that. So, Sean, you and I may have a different view on that. But my view is, if you're making money off your time in government, then I don't think you're fit to be president of the United States. Well, more importantly, though, what's our policy? Stand with our allies while avoiding World War III. And that's where I'm at.
A lot of people don't think you're qualified because you weren't even a Republican or voting Republican until what, 2020?
Well, Sean, I think that it depends on what your objectives with this interview are. I voted Libertarian in my first election. I voted Republican in 2020. You're right. I'm not a partisan hack. I come in from the outside.
Forgive you for your screw-up.
I'm an independent-minded patriot who speaks the truth.
It sounds to me like you just want to jump from the private sector yourself, where you made a lot of money. By the way, I applaud capitalism. I applaud successful people.
Sean, I applaud you for being so transparent about your objectives.
I actually think that people working in the defense of our country, in the defense industry, are playing a vital role for the cause of freedom. So I don't really call it a corrupting influence or suggest that somehow that's a corrupting influence. I actually like the experience that goes along with working for defense contractors. But I've got to listen.
One of the things I loved about that interview with Tucker, was we were actually able to have a thoughtful conversation and go deep into issues rather than this kind of political gotcha.
The point is this: you go on these interviews. Yeah, I have nothing but nice things to say. But here's your problem:
people should watch it.
You go on these shows, people quote your exact words, and you deny your own words. And
I'm saying, pause it. I do love the fact that Vivek brought up his interview with Tucker Carlson. That was great. And forcing, I think that's got to be the first time since Tucker left that anyone at Fox has even said his name, that anyone has openly acknowledged his existence and said his name. And it's great that the person who says his name is Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity, who pretends to like Tucker Carlson, but I think you could tell when Tucker was there, just the handoff between the two. Sean Hannity could barely contain his disgust with Tucker Carlson. But putting that aside, I will say on Sean Hannity's part that, it takes a lot of courage. I think we should applaud his courage and his boldness to speak up for for marginalized communities. To speak up for people who are really victims, the powerless in our world. And in this case, he's speaking up for defense contractors and career politicians. I applaud defense contractors. They defend freedom. Here's what I love about Sean Hannity, and I use the word love, and I mean the opposite of it, but he's just been saying the exact same thing since like 2002. But it's not the kind of consistency that you applaud, okay? It's not the kind of consistency where you say, well, he's stuck by his principles. No, it's just basic, early 2000s neocon establishment Republican talking points. And he just sticks to, no matter what happens, he sticks to them. They don't change. And it's only ever talking points. Have you ever in your life, this is a serious, I mean this is a sincere question. Sean Hannity has been on air for, 25 years? Have you ever heard him offer anything approaching an actual insight? Have you ever heard him say anything even remotely interesting? Have you ever heard him offer something that sounds like an actual thought and isn't just talking points that he printed out from the RNC? Have you ever heard that? Have you ever thought to one time, in 25 years, have you ever thought to yourself, wow, Sean Hannity made a great point? Have you ever said to someone else or heard them say to you, Hannity had a great insight the other night. It was, and then have you ever heard that? Never. It's it's an amazing, again, consistency. Not a consistency that we applaud, not the kind of consistency we applaud, but it's still an amazing consistency that he's been talking for 25 years and has never said one interesting thing. You would think that in 25 years of talking, you would accidentally say a few interesting things, and he never has. Every Halloween you hear about the dangers in the candy that your kids will get, which is why if you're a loving father like myself, you eat half of the candy so that you can mitigate those dangers to your child. But this year, the real tricks are in the meat aisle. Good Ranchers wants to take the trick out of your meat, and they're throwing in a treat for my listeners for $30 off your order with promo code Walsh at goodranchers.com. Lab-grown meat is growing more and more popular. Foreign meat can be labeled as a product of the United States, and the mRNA vaccine development is on the rise for agriculture. What's in your meat is even more in question than ever before. Amidst these haunting truths, the real hero arises, Good Ranchers. The number one place to get America's best pork, beef, chicken, and seafood is with Good Ranchers, and they deliver it right to your door. Their products are transparently sourced, all American and delicious. When you shop at goodranchers.com, you don't have to question what's in your meat or where your meat is coming from. You already know they have a 100% American guarantee and a transparent vaccination policy. Take the mystery out of the meat aisle. Visit goodranchers.com and use my code Walsh to get $30 off with free express shipping on your box of America's best meat and seafood today. That's code Walsh for $30 off your box today at goodranchers.com. American meat delivered. It is very similar to, as we've marveled before over someone like Trevor Noah, who was on air for he wasn't on air for as long as Sean Hannity, but still he was on air for 6 or 7 years in a comedy show, never managed to say one funny thing, and that was also pretty impressive. So it's kind of a similar situation. So what do we hear from Hannity there? He's sticking up for defense contractors and career politicians, and he's also implying that Vivek is unqualified because he's coming from the private sector. God forbid he had a real job and he's been out in the private sector. He's had success there, and now he wants to, now he's entering politics. So he's getting attacked for that, and also for not voting Republican in the past. Which, who does that remind you of? Does that remind you of a politician, a current politician, who Sean Hannity has professed himself to be a big fan of, a big supporter of for years now? Like Donald Trump? Donald Trump got into politics. He was not a career politician. He came out of the private sector. He came from the private sector right into running for president. Same thing for Ramaswamy. And he was voting not just libertarian, but voting Democrat up until the few years before he ran for president. You don't hear Sean Hannity criticizing Trump for that, do you? But the real issue here, even putting all that aside, the real issue is what's the problem exactly with what Vivek has said about the situation in the Middle East? Is, again, unless he said something that I haven't heard that's truly crazy. All I've heard from him is just, listen, what happened is terrible, condemn it, it's awful, it's evil, Israel has to defend itself. In the United States of America, we have to continue always to put our own security, put our own people first, always, because this is our country, and the people that run our country are supposed to be representing our people, and so we have to put our people first. And what that means is not that we don't care about what's happening to other people. Doesn't mean that we don't condemn evil when it occurs elsewhere in the world. It just means that we can't do something that's going to needlessly put our own people in harm's way or harm our country in some other way. That's it. Not only is that not controversial, but that is actually the baseline position that every American should have, and certainly every American politician should have. And that baseline position doesn't mean that we never go to war under any circumstance. Like, I don't think anyone's saying that there's never been a justified war that America's been involved in. It's just a matter of what are our priorities. And are we going to be cautious and thoughtful, or are we going to be Lindsey Graham just running over there and bombing everybody? If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.